So, welcome back to the Defiant Spirit and my podcast where I explore all things Enneagram, Viktor Frankl, the meaning, the purpose of life, and today bringing all those things together around the holiday of Thanksgiving. So, Thanksgiving coming up here in America as I'm recording this, and I want to spend the month of November for me personally and helping people around me get ready for Thanksgiving at the deepest level, not just to shove turkey down your throat and to go through the motions of a family gathering, but to really get into the essence of what Thanksgiving is about and what family gatherings are all about. So Thanksgiving, pretty straightforward messaging, right? Thanksgiving, giving thanks. What does it mean to give thanks? It's not just saying thank you. I think of really the idea of gratitude. It's a word that's thrown around all the time now, like just have a gratitude practice. But it doesn't mean anything unless we really dig into to what it means. So what does it mean to have gratitude? It means to pay attention. It means to be conscious, to be mindful. Because if you're conscious, if you're mindful, if your eyes are really open, you can't help but feel grateful. It's so easy to focus on what's missing in our lives, what's absent. And so the work of a mindfulness practice, of a gratitude practice, is to pay attention to all that is right, to all that is good. Because in any given circumstance, I can find 1,000 things that aren't right or could be better. But I also, would have to be blind not to see all of the blessings. I was just talking to somebody because we're moving towards the elections here in America, and they were telling me about how the world has never been worse off. There's never been more murder, more racism, more poverty. I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, really, you have to be listening to the news all day, every day to believe that. Because never before in human history has there been less war, has there been less murder, has there been less poverty, has there been less racism. Does it mean we live in utopia? No. Does it mean compared to every other time in history we are utopian in comparison? Yes. It has never been better. But our attention goes to CNN and MSNBC and Fox. This is not political. This is just the nature of the news industry. They sell papers not based on happy moments and good times, but based on diversity, based on tension and on bad news, on bad things happening. And so we live in a world right now, we're being bombarded with messages of absence and negativity and what's wrong and what's broken. And we've got to work incredibly hard to stave off that negativity, to place our attention on what is good and right. And yes, develop a gratitude practice. So important to roll out of bed every morning and count your blessings. In the Jewish tradition, the first words out of your mouth are supposed to be modeh or modah, masculine, feminine, depends on male or female. And it means thank you. That's it. Thank you. The word actually Jew means Yehudi or Yehudiah, means gratitude. Thank you. Todah is the Hebrew word. So we're supposed to, all of us, live our lives of just waking up and saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. What do we do with little kids? We say thank you, say thank you. Is it innatural? Is it innate for a child to say thank you? No. We ingrain that within them. We do it through repetition, behavioral. Say thank you. And finally, at some point, it starts to click. Well, we're all animals. We're all behavioral. And so we have to create behaviors that lead us to saying thank you. And that's what Thanksgiving is. It's an opportunity to say thank you, not just for the meal that we're going to head into at the end of the month of November, but to cultivate a thank you practice, a gratitude practice along the way. Well, that brings us to the Enneagram. I want to jump into the Enneagram as really a roadmap for a gratitude practice, especially around the Thanksgiving table or any table where family and friends come together, because sometimes it's easy to be grateful in theory, in a vacuum, out in the world. But what happens when you come together with, your cousin Vinny, who is a Trump supporter, or your Uncle Jim, who's a rabid liberal? And so it pushes your boundaries, it pushes your buttons, it challenges you to be grateful, to be kind, to be compassionate in the face of the tensions of family. And family, like no other in this world, has the ability to challenge our ability to be grateful, to find what is good. It's unfortunate. Family is what it's all about. At the end of the day, it's about family, friends, community, and oftentimes, more often than not, those are the places where there's greatest tension of all. So the Enneagram has proven to be a roadmap for me in navigating my life and learning how to be more grateful, but also in how to deal with the people around me and find gratitude within them, see the goodness within them, and appreciate that goodness even when there's tension, even when they make it very hard to find something to be grateful about. So I want to walk around the Thanksgiving table. I want to get ready for Thanksgiving and through this month of elections and into the gratitude season as we move from there into Christmas and Hanukkah, to use the Enneagram as a way to move into Thanksgiving and cultivate a gratitude practice. So we're going to just go around the Enneagram, and I'm going to talk to you about the ways we can find gratitude in the people around the table, and you're going to have a different Enneagram type, a different number, a different type of person around that table, and we'll go through all 9 of them, and I'm sure you'll find them around your table. So a guy walks into a Thanksgiving family gathering, and he runs into an Enneagram 1. How do you know if it's an Enneagram 1? Sometimes called the reformer, sometimes called the perfectionist, sometimes called the anal retentive. This is a very specific type of person. Specific is a good word. They are detail oriented. They tend to be rigid. They tend to be a little bit tight, a little bit constricted. You can feel their energy. They tend to be conservative in nature, not necessarily politically, maybe politically, but certainly in the way they approach life, a little more buttoned down, a little more straight-laced. They're the types that are probably going to be offended about, your truck driver mouth, your swearing, and they're the ones who are going to be on time. They're going to be the ones who really want to make sure that all of the silverware is lined up and everything is laid out just appropriately. So they can be very difficult when you don't measure up to their expectations, when you don't measure up to their worldview of perfection. Now, it helps me to be more compassionate towards them when I realize it's coming from a deep place of criticism. And it's not just criticism about you or me. It's a criticism about themselves. Enneagram 1s, the reformer, the perfectionist, has more inner criticism than any other type. So I have a lot of 1s in my life. I have a lot of 1 clients too. And my relationship has hinged upon realizing that they don't need criticism for me. So if I know a 1 is hosting the Thanksgiving supper, I will not criticize anything. Even if I have something constructive to say, trust me, they have thought about it. They know it's not perfect. They know it could be better. They don't need me to add insult to injury. What they do need me to add to is the compassion, the forgiveness. They're not so compassionate or forgiving. That translates out towards me, oftentimes, towards you, but really it comes from a place of they don't have enough compassion towards themselves. And so what I'll do with a 1 is point out all that is good and right and leave the imperfections for them to figure out. As I always say, my job with an Enneagram, every other Enneagram type is to help them become better. With a 1 is to help them become worse. And so I'll go into that Thanksgiving table, that holiday, and I'll remind them of how beautiful and good it is, and that perfection is the enemy of the good, and that what they've done, what they've contributed, whether it's at the table or whether it's in their life, is truly good, and good is enough. So to go into my relationship with 1s or yours around the table with more compassion, knowing that they're scared. The elections have brought up a lot in the 1s I've seen because it's a very precarious time where they feel like we're on the edge of chaos with almost like a civil war here in America. It feels like brewing, and it scares them. So they want structure, they want order, they cling tightly to the past or to their old ways, not necessarily believing in those ways so much as believing in the need for order and attach yourself to something, to anything. And so I really approach them with a gentleness and a forgiveness and a compassion, and it brings down their defensiveness. So if I can become more compassionate with them, if you can become more compassionate with them around the table, overlook their criticisms of you, don't take them on, and know that it's coming from a place of they truly just want to be good. They want to give you the best of what they have to offer. And so helping them by becoming grateful for all that effort that is behind everything they do. That's one way to soften and be in relationship with ones and bring down some of that tension and cultivate gratitude. Enneagram 2s. For sure, an Enneagram 2 is put on your Thanksgiving meal. They are always behind the scenes. They are always cooking. They're the ones who are, coordinating, doing the invitations, making sure we have a Thanksgiving holiday, because it might have just fallen through the cracks if it was left up to 8s like me. The 2 is the helper. They're the giver. They're the nurturer. They are the bread and butter, not only on that table, but in our lives. They just need to be reminded, A, that they have a seat at the table. They're not just responsible for bringing all of us to the table. B, we have to invite them to their own table sometimes, or they're waiting to be invited. And C, that they don't need to give to get. They don't like to hear this. I would say it gently, but we love them regardless of the food, regardless of the holiday, that they are wanted, they are valuable, they are part and parcel of our lives, and they don't need to give in order to get from us. We need to learn how to give to them without having to be asked, or without certainly having to be sort of manipulated and brought to this table as a way to get their needs met. So one of the things that I do to really appreciate 2s is to know that when they are manipulating or coercing or sort of giving to get, is it comes from such a good place. They want to love. They want to be loved. And they struggle with their worth. They struggle like all of us, but they struggle specifically with the worth of being loved, of being worthy of being loved. And so when I realize that with a 2, I know it comes from a good place, the flattery and all of the sort of the manipulative stuff that they can get into. And I forgive them, right off the bat, because again, they're giving something they don't really believe they have, which is a sense of feeling loved and being loved. And so, for instance, an example of this was my grandmother, my grandma Flo. She was a quintessential 2, and she would just give, and we had to invite her to her own table. On her 95th birthday, I use this example a lot, she was cooking and cleaning her own birthday dishes, and we had to say, Grandma, sit down, we want to celebrate you. And she couldn't receive it. It was heartbreaking. We had to encourage her to sit down, to receive the gifts, to receive our blessings, to receive our love. And so really appreciating just how deeply a 2 wants to give and wants to love, and how wounded they are at a deep core level. We're all wounded, but they're wounded around not feeling worthy of that love. So making them feel worthy of that love, it softens my heart to them. And another really important piece of relationship with 2s is to have good boundaries with them, right? Not accept things that you don't want, to just be very clear in your boundaries, and be able to say no to them and explain that this is where sort of the boundary is, and it needs to be respected. And once you have those clear boundaries, it's much easier to be in relationship with it too, and it'll bring down some of the tension at your Thanksgiving table. Enneagram 3, the achiever. These are the ones who are going to put on the Thanksgiving production, and it's going to be a rock star event, or it'll be at a really fancy venue, or it'll be super lavish and expensive, and they might get caught up in the pomp, the circumstance, the image of it all. They need to be reminded of, it's not about the appearance, the way it looks on the surface. It's about what's behind all of that. It doesn't have to be successful. It doesn't have to be top notch. What it has to be is authentic and real. 3s can struggle with authenticity and with realness and with being honest about, they really just want to be seen also like the 2s as worthy and loved. And whereas 2s get that acknowledgement through how much they give, 3s get it through how successful it is or how good they look. And they just need to be reminded that, it could be Kentucky Fried Chicken out of a bag, and ultimately it's about the relationship. It's not about the food or the circumstances. They need to be brought back to relationship. So, you can go through a Thanksgiving meal with a 3 and you might not touch on anything of depth, anything of real. It's an opportunity to stop the Thanksgiving process and say, hey, let's take a moment to go around the table and say our thanks, say our gratitude for, who's around this table and what we are in each other's lives. They also might get caught up in worldly events. Worldly talk could be about their business, their profession, their kids and how accomplished they are. And we need to help them get back to, it's okay if those things don't happen, if they don't pan out, if they're not true, that it's not about that. It's about, at the end of the day, it's about relationship, it's about connection, it's about love, and that's all that matters. And when I remember that a 3 is coming from a place of insecurity, and they're just insecure about their worth, it helps me soften to them. I become more compassionate towards them and more grateful for all the effort that they put into everything they do, and where it comes from a good place, that they just truly want to be loved, and that's how they've learned to do it in the world. Enneagram 4 behind me, you can see the individualist, the romantic, the expressive, the artist. This is a person who really grapples with feelings of worth, as we all do. 2's around wanting to be loved, so they give love. 3's wanting to be loved, so they perform. 4's wanting to be loved, so they want to be special. They want to be unique. They want to be seen. They can be a little much. They can overdo it in reaction. They can become sort of flamboyant or overly expressive or create drama. A lot of drama around those tables oftentimes revolves around a 4, stirring the pot. And when I remember where it comes from this place that they don't feel special, then I pay more attention to them. And I want to see their specialness. And I want to remind them that they are special. There never was, is, or will not ever be another one like them. And so my more work around 4s is really to meditate upon just how unique they are, and to come back to that as the starting point, to remind them of that, how unique and special they are, and that they don't have to try to stand out. They are a standout with no matter, regardless of what they do or how they say it. Enneagram 4s are truly beautiful human beings, and you're going to see probably lend their artistic expression around the table. So in my house, Ariella is a 4, and she really brings to life I want to say our Seder table, because I'm thinking Passover, but whether it's Passover or Thanksgiving, they're the same concept, that she's the one who makes us go around and say something from the heart. These are heart people. They go deep. Don't create a superficial, shallow environment, because they'll struggle. Invite them to deepen the conversation, and they will. She does with us, and they will at yours. And appreciate them. Don't cut them off. Don't make them feel I don't know, like they're too much, because they have so much to offer, and just because we can't handle it doesn't mean they're too much. So just appreciate the depth of who they are. Enneagram 5, the investigator, the thinker. These are probably the most conservative of all types, certainly the most reserved of all types, probably the least comfortable around that table. I would say 9s and 5s are going to be the least comfortable, the least likely to sort of speak up and start the sharing process. Don't put them on the spot. Know that they're, really struggle to find comfort in social settings. It doesn't mean they're introverts. They tend to be, but they can come out of their shell, but it needs to be on their time frame. So really, don't measure them by the quantity of words or experience, but by the quality. Whereas 4s are much more about quantity, 2s are more about quantity. 5s are going to be much more about quality, and just really appreciate what they have to offer. Also, like if you're going around the table saying thank yous, gratitudes, give them a chance to pass and come back to them when their time is ready. They'll do it on their terms, but they can't be forced or coerced. They need time to process, and it can make them look cold. It can make them look a little bit calloused, and they're not. I just have so much compassion for 5s and how much it takes for them to get in touch with their emotions and then translate that into words. So my relationship with 5s has changed, because I don't want to say I expect very little from them. That doesn't sound right. But I appreciate all the effort that goes into every ounce that comes out of them. So I treat it more preciously than what I would, let's say, a 4 who is more effusive in their expression. And so really giving them time and space, appreciating the contemplative nature, how they slow things down. When I'm working with 5s now, I really try not to cut them off once they get going. I tend to cut people off as an 8, and I got to really work with 5s to respect their space, appreciate sort of like the tortoise and the hare. They're the tortoise, and they're slow and they're steady and they're methodical, and really appreciating it and knowing it's a Herculean effort sometimes to come out of that shell. Enneagram 6, the loyalist, the loyal skeptic. Enneagram 6s are good people. They're just good. I think 1s and 6s are the best people I know. They can be very anxious and angsty. There's 2 types of 6s. They're the phobic 6s. And they, you can feel a neurosis to them. They're going to be worked up about, lots of different things around that table coming there, the logistics, does anybody have COVID? Have you been tested? What's the fire code capacity in this space we have 100 people. So there's an angst to them. And I find it now so endearing. I used to kind of find it annoying, frankly. They're the ones who would call me as clients and ask me 55 questions, and it's like 54 are the same question, and I've answered it, and I get annoyed. Now I appreciate they're just probing. They're kind of like testing out the waters because they just live in the world with a little more trepidation than others, and I appreciate how much faith and courage it takes for them to get behind the wheel and drive down the street or to get on an airplane and to fly. So that's one type of a 6. The other type of 6 is more of a tough guy, tough gal. So they come across a little more aggressive, like an 8 might, a challenger, but they're not challengers. And it's more from a place of fear and anxiety. And once I know that, I see a scared little boy, little girl in there who's just being tough. And when I realize that, when I remember that, it softens me to them. And I don't want to fight them like I do my fellow 8s. I want to make them feel secure. They're so loyal. They're such good people. I think like an anxious dog is a 4. I have a dog, Sky, who's an anxious 6, and he's totally an anxious 6. Then there are other dogs that are more like, 2s, and they're more like golden retrievers, loving and go with the flow. But my dog is really tentative, and he might bark at you, but it's only because he's scared. He would never bite you. And once you realize he's scared, you can approach him differently. And so I don't want to, make 6s sound like a bunch of fraidy cats, but it just softens my heart to them when I know that they're feeling very, insecure in a world that honestly is really tough and difficult right now, all times, but especially right now. They're having a hard time. They had a hard time during COVID. So just going into it with more gratitude for them. They're such loyal human beings that also is something I'm so grateful for. When I have a 6 in my life who's in my corner, I know I have a friend or a family member for life. And so really honoring them and appreciating them for that. Enneagram 7, the enthusiast. They're the life of the party. They're the ones who make the parties fun. They keep the conversations lively and going. They're usually appreciated in these settings, in these situations. Now, they can become quite annoying because they're almost the opposite of the 5. They're too out there. They kind of suck up oxygen sometimes. They dominate the conversation or they steer it in a different direction. They have this dominant personality and people just follow them. So I really appreciate their leadership skills, their natural extroversion. And I also appreciate that it's coming from oftentimes a place of insecurity. All types are insecure. 7s just don't look insecure. They look like they're really secure, but they're coming from a place of wanting to steer the conversation away from depth, away from struggle, difficult things that they're maybe not comfortable with. It doesn't mean they can't go deep and dark, but if it's deep and dark in a way that's painful to them, they will steer clear of it. They will keep it shallow. They're the ones who will, drop in the jokes to lighten the tension, but maybe the tension shouldn't have been lightened. Maybe it was appropriate to be welling up in tears right now, and a joke actually is a way to undermine the vulnerability. I do this a lot. As an 8, I lean on that 7 quality, and I diffuse vulnerability. And so when I appreciate that 7s are just Peter Pan. They're little boys and girls who don't want to grow up. They want to live in Never Never Land. I start to soften to that crassness, to the jokes, to the shallowness, and I can help them go deeper, hold their sort of feet to the fire and dig in a little more. Help fives come out of their shells, help seven go into the shell. Yin and yang, a lot of times with these lines, as you can see behind me. Enneagram 8, the challenger. This is my default. So they're the tough guy, the tough gal. They're the ones who were pretty controlling. We're going to put together a solid Thanksgiving dinner, but, it's going to be sort of our way or the highway if we're not careful. We tend to hold grudges, maybe have a vendetta. Uncle Vinny didn't get invited to the table because he pissed me off at the last elections, kind of thing. And so if I know I'm dealing with an 8, first of all, I know that there's a heat, there's an anger under there, and I know where it comes from. It comes from a good place, that they care about justice. They care about truth. They live with broad strokes and big macro stuff. And so it comes from a good place, but it doesn't mean it's okay. And I need to understand it. So I always say I need to explain it, not excuse it. So if you're at a table with somebody who's an 8 and they're holding a grudge towards somebody, to really challenge them on softening, to getting them to forgive. And it starts by forgiving them. It starts by being compassionate to them, not going head to head with them. Now, there's a time and place to go head to head with them. It's not the Thanksgiving table. This is the situation where it blows up and you have these horrible memories of a uncle and a grandfather screaming at each other. I have one of these. And slamming the door and never talking again. One of those had to be an 8. So really making sure that that's not the venue that things blow up, diffusing the situation, taking 8s off to the side, calming them down, cooling them down. They react, and we don't need reactivity at a Thanksgiving table. So, but appreciating that it usually comes from a place of wanting to defend and to protect. And so oftentimes they'll be defending themselves or somebody who they perceive as weak and vulnerable, and really appreciating that where it's coming from with an 8. Also appreciating all that an 8 does in your life. 8s are the hardest working of all types. I mean, they're workhorses. So if you have 8s in your life around that table, just appreciate, acknowledge all the work that they have done. They tend to be in the love language world, not necessarily verbal. They can be, but it's more of acts. Show them. Right? The words certainly have their time and place, and at a Thanksgiving table, to really acknowledge all the efforts, all the defense, all the security that an 8 provides, that will speak to their heart. And last but not least, and it's an important one to say, last but not least about the 9, the peacemaker, because they can, in that process of creating peace and harmony and love, they can lose themselves. They can put themselves last. And it's important to make sure they have a seat at the table. 2s and 9s can be left out of the table, because they're busy cooking and providing, and 2s will be doing it because they really want to be invited to the table, and they're kind of hoping if they invite you to the table, you'll invite them to the table. 9s are doing it more from a place of they just don't want to cause any waves and disrupt, and sometimes it comes from a place of they don't feel worthy to really have a full seat at the table, but they need to have a seat at the table. They're worthy, and part of that seat means getting their needs met, making sure that they have the foods that they want, and that they're, we're operating on their time frame, not just ours, because they'll acquiesce too often. And oftentimes it's not a true acquiescing. It's not a true accommodating. It's coming from a place of fear, a fear of conflict. So really, certainly don't go head to head with 9s in general, but especially not at the table. Challenging them in a soft, kind, gentle way to pull up a seat, to get their needs met, to eat, to say what they need to say. Right? And to invite conflict, that it's okay. We can have beautiful conversations around this table that are respectful, where we agree to disagree. And they'll feel far more safe. Don't go head to head with them, but really invite them in and open up the opportunity for disagreement. As you go into these holidays, there's so much strife in this world, whether it's politics, whether it's cultural things that are going on, whether it's immigration issues that are making their way into our daily lives, or there's just 1,000 things. I'm feeling sort of divisive even bringing them all up. now is a time where we need to have hard conversations. We do. We need to agree to disagree. We need to find ways to resolve so many of these tensions. And seeing the world through each other's Enneagram type is a game changer. If I can start to put myself into your shoes, where are you coming from? What's your why? What's your core fear? Each one of these types has their core fear. Each one of these types has their core purpose, their why. If I can start to understand what they're afraid of, where they're coming from, it starts to give me more compassion towards them, makes me feel more grateful for how much they're overcoming by doing what they're doing, why they're doing it, and so softening my response to them, softening their response to me. If we can do this, we achieve what Viktor Frankl talked about, to stop living in reaction, to take responsibility, the ability to choose our response. And that's what this is all about. As we go into Thanksgiving, as we go into this holiday, treat it as a holy day, a day to come together with people you love or people you don't even know yet that you love, to come together, to see the world through their eyes, to invite them to have a seat at the table, to tend to them, to serve them, to see them, to give to them, to receive from them. And if we do that, we will all have truly a day of Thanksgiving, a month of Thanksgiving, and a year of Thanksgiving, and it'll be very different a year from now. So with that, go into your holiday of Thanksgiving, go into this month of November, this month of Thanksgiving, and into this year of Thanksgiving, and take back your power to choose your response. And I know this year will be a response of gratitude. I will see you or talk to you in the next podcast.